My name is Justin, and I am a son of God and an addict, and the host of the RECO12 speaker meeting. And thanks to my God, the steps, and the fellowship of other addicts, I am living the relative, happy, joyous, and free life that is promised to those living in recovery and have been very active in the rooms of recovery since September of 2013. Welcome to the 127th meeting of RECO12. RECO12 is an organization with the mission of learning and sharing the similarities of addiction of all kinds and the similarity of recovery from all afflictions and addictions, and gaining and sharing tools and hope from others who are trudging this road. We are an open meeting for all, no matter your life experiences, faith, traditions, nationality, or background. To learn more about RECO12, please go to www.reco12.com. That's RECO12.com to learn more about us. RECO12 appreciates your help in keeping us working our 12th step and are grateful to receive donations to cover Zoom and podcast overhead costs. I will put the information and links in the chat of the live meeting as well as in the show notes of the podcast if you wish to contribute to this cause. If RECO12 is a meaningful tool for you in your recovery walk, please consider rating and reviewing the podcast platform of your using. We look forward each week to receiving from the light reflected by our speakers from their higher power. That light inspires hope, meaning, worth, and growth in us, the listening audience. And I'm so grateful for today's speaker, Wendi F., who was a previous guest from meeting number 4, and she stepped in last minute with the change from our announced speaker who had some conflicts come up. Wendi, who just experienced her 11th birthday of sobriety, will be speaking to us on the topic of living in the solution. Now, here's a little bit about Wendi before I turn the floor over to her. Wendi's SA journey began in 2010. Today, she has learned to use the tools of the program to grow her spiritual life and stay in the solution. The steps, meetings, sponsorship, fellowship, and most importantly, staying connected to her higher power are especially effective tools for her. She considers herself blessed with this opportunity to share what's worked for her. Wendi, the floor is yours. Take it away.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And I'm glad that God worked it out. I really enjoy being of service in this way. So thank you so much. As was said, I'm Wendi and I'm a sexaholic. I've had sobriety one day at a time since November 7th of 2011. And I never thought in a million years I would be here. In SA, living in the solution. But I had to have a change of heart and a change of attitude and intentions to be free of living in the problem. So that change came about from working through the steps. So by doing that, I now have a new system of thoughts and beliefs. It's a spiritual set of principles, and the principles that I continuously study and practice in my daily life. And this is, for me, the principle, well, I'll just share this. The principles happen automatically for me when I do an honest working of the steps. And they're the character assets that replace the character defects I've lived with my whole life. The principles for me were the answer to the question of, well, what will happen to me? I remember thinking that when I first came in, like I had to give up everything. What's going to be left of me? Well, living in the solution is what's left. And practicing the principles is how I stay in that solution in all my affairs. So not just in recovery. So in order to kind of help explain how these 12 steps and 12 principles work for me, I'm just going to kind of use the template of the steps. So the first principle embodied in step 1 is honesty. Honesty is found in the first 2 words of the step. We admitted. And for me, my admission over powerlessness and unmanageability was the first time I'd been honest with myself or anybody really in my entire life. I used to lie when I didn't even need to. So, I could never be honest with myself or anybody else. I'd never spent a minute in a life of reality. I lived in a life where reality just didn't exist. So how could I be honest, right? I had to learn about honesty. I have to practice honesty until it's a habit. And the more I practice being honest, the easier it is. It's the cliche is true. The truth shall set you free. Free from having to remember everything I said. Free from having to remember everything I did or said I did. And I can see now how being dishonest gives people power over me. Just the way that my actions and my behavior and my attitudes are formed in that moment. So by being honest, I can be trusted and I'm trustworthy. And those are two big things that are important to me. Step 2 teaches the principle of hope. So through the acceptance of a higher power's existence, the phrase in the White Book applies to me. I came to believe. I walked into an SA meeting. I was battered, bruised, beaten down, found out, full of shame and guilt and fear. And after a time, I was able to identify with my first step and admitted the insanity of it. And when I heard I could be restored to sanity, I was desperate enough to try anything. I had no religion or spirituality in my life growing up, and I separate them because for me, they are separate. You can be religious without spirituality, and you can be spiritual without religion. So I kind of see them as two different things for me anyway. And so I went to the meetings over and over, and I listened to people sharing about being peaceful and serene and joyful. And they shared that all this was possible because of their faith in a higher power. And this faith offered hope. So this is where I came to. It never occurred to me until working step 2 that there was a power greater than me who could take care of me, who cared for me, who protected me, who was always there for me, even though I wasn't aware or inviting him in. And in my addiction, I was the only power that could make sure that I got what I needed and wanted. And I began to follow the wisdom of a sponsor. That's another way that I came to. And she said to act as if you believe. And I thought that was kind of weird. And she said, just use the serenity prayer if that's all you can do, and just act as if you believe and get down on your knees and pray out loud. And I thought, well, okay, well, that's really weird. Never prayed or prayed out loud for anything really, other than to blame God. But it kind of felt like, oh, I'm talking to myself, which I guess as an addict, I think I'm God. So I guess that, I mean, living in the problem, there's just no room for God. So that door is shut. The sunlight was blocked. So I began to notice miracles, small miracles, and I prayed with gratitude. Like I said, even though I didn't know what I was doing, but I prayed thanking God for the small miracles. And as more miracles happened, they got bigger and bigger, and my faith grew. And before you knew it, I had a trust in a higher power, and I came to believe. So let's see. So spiritual principle number 3 for step 3 is faith. In page 36 on the 12 and 12, it says, the more we become willing to depend on a higher power, the more independent we become. And how true that is. I mean, it was my self-proclaimed freedom that was blocking true freedom. And it's so nice to not have to have all the answers, to not have to try to control outcomes. I can have faith that surrender will bring God's plan into view for me. I don't have to keep up the facade that I'm self-sufficient anymore. Practicing faith means that I trust that God's got my back, and no matter what, and that no matter what problems are thrown my way in this crazy world that we live in, I can be assured that it's all part of the plan. And that's not always easy. It's not always easy to do because obviously as a human, my plans can be a lot different than what is really best for me. Let's see, regarding faith too, I surrendered my financial troubles and praying that I would be given everything I need, not money, but everything I need. And that happened. I surrendered my marriage and my children at the risk of losing them. And they've both flourished now in God's plan. So it's wonderful. And I just need to stay out of the way. So if I'm out of the way, I'm practicing faith. And that's kind of how I see that. One way, anyway. And God knows that I'm willful. He knows I'm human, and I'll try to be willful as often as I can. And every time this happens, I'm usually given a gentle reminder in some form that I don't need to trouble myself trying to figure out the plan. Today, I have faith that surrendering my will to my higher power brings freedom from worry, fear, self-pity, and resentment. And those are just a few of the defects that come to mind. And that clears the way for me for more faith. So my faith grows each time I practice turning my will and my life over to my higher power. Another way to stay in the solution is through step 4, and that principle is courage. Definition of courage is strength in the face of fear, pain, or grief. In step into action, it says fearless meant we were willing to face the truth about ourselves. It didn't mean we were without fear. We were afraid, but we took the action anyway. And for me, the action that they're referring to is the fearless and searching moral inventory. It takes a lot of courage for me to finally face my own selfish needs, my own selfish and self-centered attitude. But with courage comes confidence, not arrogance, confidence that I can face all the hurt and wrong and I won't die. I guess it came from knowing myself for real. I've heard a lot of people say that they put off this step and delay it as long as possible. And for me, I was ready. I was ready to find out what needed fixing. And I already knew I had hurt people with my behavior and my actions and my words. But it doesn't say we made a searching and fearless moral inventory and then beat ourselves over the head with it. You know, there's a period after inventory. We made a fearless and searching moral inventory, and that's it. It's a fact-facing and fact-finding exercise, and it requires courage. So that's part of living in the solution of step 4. Step 5 is integrity. Didn't even know what that word meant or how to practice it. And now I know that it's as important as practicing step 1 for me. It means that I can be the same person on the outside that I am on the inside. I'm not hiding behind confidence or a delusion of control. It means I'm being honest, and I don't have to have all the answers. I can trust God. I can trust that God and my fellows know more about me and know more what's best for me than me. Practicing integrity means I don't take from life anymore. I give, and when I give, I'm freely given. I don't know how this stuff works, and I know some of the cliches are worn out, but it works. And with integrity, again, I'm trusted and I can be trustworthy. I sincerely care about people and listen to people. And I want to be there for people. That was never a part of my makeup in before recovery. I didn't have time to listen to people, just get to the point already. That's kind of how I was. And now, I can, it's a way of living where I can be wrong and often am, and I don't have to try to cover it up or blame someone for it. Like I can just say I'm wrong. And again, like I said, I don't die from that. So, I'm part of the human race. My life now is simple, transparent, basic. And today I not only know what integrity means, but I live it, practicing step 5 and the principle of step 5, integrity. In step 6, willingness. This is a huge part of my living in the solution, is being willing. And what I read about the definition of that is it implies a process of moving away from our will toward God's will voluntarily. So not because I'm in church and someone says, you better do this, you better do that. I'm doing it voluntarily. And it teaches me also, willingness teaches me that my way doesn't always work. Actually, pretty often I'm wrong. And I have to be willing to try something new, and be willing to do that. I'm aware of my defects. And even though I'd rather hold on to some of them, I'm willing to change. And as a willful person, I was self-centered, stubborn, and determined to prove that I could chart my own course in life and that I was always right. I was rebellious, resistant, and defiant. Being willing is the opposite of those. It's to yield, to concede, and to be agreeable. So rebellious, resistant, and defiant are the opposite of that for me. So today I practice being willing, and I use the word practice a lot in here. And if I'm not willing, I pray for willingness to be willing. It's not unusual for that to happen. Next principle, and the way I like to live today, is in step 7, humility. I learned in step 7, and it doesn't mean you're funny, although it does give me the ability to laugh at myself. I'm okay not being God. I can stay right-sized as long as I practice humility. And again, there's freedom in that. I can ask for help. I can be teachable. And it's so much nicer than trying to be self-reliant all the time. By practicing humility, I'm free to be the person I am, with strengths and weaknesses, likes and dislikes and feelings, and I can express those in a way that is, I don't know how to explain how to do it in a humble way, but I can do it with humility, I guess. In step into action, let's see. In Step into Action, it says about humility, as long as we lacked a relationship with a higher power, we were masquerading as that power. That would be me. Humility, though, is a natural byproduct of accepting that I'm not God. And as a humble child of God, I strive to only be a channel for his love, for his peace, for his mercy, to enter this world. And for me, that's humility. There's a lot of other ways to explain it, but for me, that's humility. The principle of brotherly love. So growing up, this step 8 and principle 8, by the way, growing up with hippies as parents, I had a completely different view of brotherly love than what is part of this program. So I found out that I was way off, and I found that this principle shows up in forgiveness and acceptance. It has nothing to do with hugs and love and kindness, although, yes, that is definitely something that's beneficial, but it has to do with forgiveness and acceptance, and not just for others, but for myself. And sometimes this is harder for me than I would like. But working through the step, and the principle I learned was that I had to adhere to the tradition that says, ever reminding us to place principles before personalities. Acceptance and forgiveness are the root of brotherly love, not just hugs and kind words. So when I'm not forgiving or accepting, I'm defensive, resentful, and self-righteous. These are not feelings I enjoy anymore. And yet they still come up. Hence the word practice. The difference now is that I can acknowledge them. I can thank them for coming and tell them they're free to go. God is waiting for them. So there's no room in my heart anymore for these. And I know the good feelings that come from practicing love for my fellows. And love and tolerance is a code I can now live by. Step 9, the principle of step 9, justice. justice. There's other words that people use for it, but that's what came up for me. And for the sake of the step work, it means that I stand ready to take full responsibility and consequences for my words or actions while not causing harm to anyone else. So I'm kind of a visual person. So I visualize that it's kind of like a court system. But as a result of working step 9, it's a self-imposed justice. And unlike going to prison with the help of a forgiving higher power, I'm set free from guilt, shame, fear, free to change my behavior and start a new way of life. And over, I'm at peace knowing, again, that I won't die if I admit I'm wrong. On the contrary, I live. 10th step principle, and the way I like to live in my solution, is perseverance. And that is a continued effort to do or achieve something despite difficulty, failure, or opposition. I'm big on definitions, in case you haven't noticed. It helps me to understand, how this word is affecting or integrated into my life. So I do that. Anyway, perseverance is a character asset. It allows me to keep going or keep coming back, as the case may be. In my recovery, it looks like progressive victory over lust in all its forms, not just sexual lust. And it's progressive victory over my character defects, mostly ego. And it's consistently doing what's right. And embodied in the step 10, it looks like this. I face myself. I evaluate my thoughts, motives, and intents. I admit where I was wrong and I make amends. And I repeat daily, sometimes hourly, forever. That's perseverance. And another one of my favorite spiritual principles and the way I like to live in the solution, step 11 is spirituality. There's a lot of differing views on spirituality, and we're not going to get into that. But the main point for me is everybody has a relationship with a higher power of their own, or they don't. That's up to them too. And I had no spirituality when I came to SA. I had no religion or any of that in my background. I think that was to my benefit, though, because when I started learning to speak to my higher power, I was able just to speak in the way that worked for me. And it was just me. I didn't have to. Yes, I do use some of the standard prayers, and they're awesome. But a lot of times I just talk to God, and I do it all day, as if He's just sitting right next to me, enjoying his coffee. So I was spirited, but I had no spirituality. And I had really no clue what spirituality meant. I think, well, here's what practicing step 11 and the principle of spirituality means in my life today. It means I'm not God, thankfully, which means there is a power greater than me that I can turn to for love and guidance and forgiveness. I strive to have God consciousness all the time, to see and feel God all around me, in the mountains, flowers, rain, and especially through all of you and my program. It means that I can meditate for a way that works for me at any given time. So depending on where I'm at or the situation, the meditation may be different. It may be repeating a phrase, God is my refuge, God is my refuge, God is my refuge. It may be sitting still, not easy for me to do. But I don't have to clear my mind. I just have to let my thoughts run through to the end. See, that's how meditation works for me. So let's see. So meditation opens up my heart. It opens up my heart for God's message. And I'm always looking for God's message. So finally, we're going to get to step 2. Where am I at here? Good. Perfect timing. The principle of step 12, I meant not to, is service. And the first thing that comes to mind here for me is the 5th of the 9th step promises. And that is that no matter how far down the scale I have gone, I can benefit others. I know that's not exactly how it goes, but it's like that. And I had gone pretty far down the scale. So even more than I realized until I came into the program. And yet here I am doing service. So hopefully someone's benefiting from it. Doing service doesn't always have to be a grand gesture. Today I do service in many ways. I attend meetings. That's being of service. I share or read at meetings. Someone somewhere down the line will benefit from that. I lead meetings. I act as a trusted servant. I do speaker shares like this one. And I put $1 in the basket. $1, even putting $1 is doing service. Somewhere down the line, someone will benefit from that. And then there's, for me, the granddaddy of all service, the heart of the program for me. And one of the best ways I stay sober and spiritually fit is sponsorship. And at first I was afraid to sponsor. I didn't want to be responsible for someone else's recovery. But my sponsor pointed out that this was still ego, and kept telling me that it's necessary if I want to stay in solution and live in sobriety and recovery. I have to give away what was given to me. And the best way to do that is through sponsorship. So now I have 4 sponsees, and I help women worldwide get connected with other women in the program. And I'm learning so much from being a sponsor and working with other women in that way. And we do this together. I'm not a teacher, and they're not a student, and I'm not the boss, and they're not the worker. I'm only a channel of God's love. And by sharing that channel, I'm on an even plane with those people. I'm not on a, you better do what I say because I have more sobriety and I'm your sponsor. No, I don't say that. I make suggestions. I say, here's what worked for me. And that's learning that has really helped me be able to sponsor. But again, it takes practice. So I'll just wrap up. For me, practicing the principles every day to the best of my ability is living in the solution. And it's a solution that works for millions of people around the world. It's the opposite of surviving. It's living. It's truly living. And the word practice is intentional. I've said that a lot. And I'm only human. So I continue to have to practice these principles. But the practice is what brings me closer to God every day. And that for me is living in the solution. Thank you for listening, and thanks for the opportunity.
Oh, Wendi, thank you so much. Good stuff. I love the walking through the principles, the steps, and how they apply in your life. Good stuff. And I just want to make a real quick comment. I want to thank you, and there are a couple other female sexaholics that I have networked with through this process, who have been a massive resource to people who come to me and say, Justin, I'm dying, and they're women. I'm like, you know what? Let me try and connect you with some people. And I want to thank you for being there for that. Just a huge benefit to help with that, and you connecting them with others so they don't feel so isolated and alone. All right. It's now time for the question and answer period. We've got a few questions that have come in from the live audience. If you have questions for Wendi, please type them in the Q&A link at the bottom of your screen, looking like 2 speech bubbles over each other. We'll get to those as we come along. I want to start off with a question that I wrote, though, before we get to those, because there was something you said that just really hit hard for me. You said that self-proclaimed freedom that blocks real freedom. What does that mean to you? If I'm proclaiming freedom and yet it blocks real freedom, tell me a little bit more about that. Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry, there I am. Hi. For me, the first word in that sentence pretty much sums it up. Self. It's self-proclaimed. It's self-reliance. It's a lie, because if I'm saying that I'm free, I'm again trying to be God. I'm again trying to dismiss the plan. If I'm in charge of my own freedom, I'm going to go back to being free the way I loved it. So. And the way it blocks me from true freedom is I'm in myself. I've got that door up that prevents God's freedom, the real freedom to be humble. And I guess for me, the real freedom is, again, just being on the outside what I am on the inside. So I don't know. I hope that answers the question.
It does. And it actually goes right into another question that came in from the live audience. This is from Sophia. Sophia says, "Hey, Wendi, thank you so much for this vulnerable and courageous share. I'm delighted by your description of integrity as being the same person inside and outside. Can you please give a real life example of what this looks like in your life today?"
Yeah, great question. Thank you, Sophia. Because integrity, that was a huge part for me to learn. Let's see if I can think of an well, being wrong, I guess. So I had an opportunity with my son where he was making decisions that I didn't agree with. And I had the opportunity to put in myself and what I thought was right. But after I prayed about it, I came to the idea that, I just need to be there to listen for him. On the inside, I wanted to be in control of that situation. I wanted to be, the great mom. But on the outside, it's God's world. It's God's timing. So being able to be that same person on the inside, knowing that everything is in God's world and God's time, I don't have to control the outcomes. I can just be honest with the fact that, I don't know all the answers, and that my son has his own higher power. And by me letting him have his own higher power, I feel like I'm practicing integrity. I don't know. There's a whole lot of ways I could talk about it, but I guess that would be one way.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Wendi. All right. Question from Eric from our live audience. How do you learn to appreciate and accept reality? Is it by trusting in higher power and using higher power's plan? Or how do you appreciate and accept reality as it is?
Practice. Like I said, it's a continuous process. So appreciate and accept. What was it? Appreciate it and accept reality. Right? Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, I would definitely say that started from a relationship with a higher power. I had no concept of reality. I lived inside my head. I saw the world through a pair of glasses that was incorrectly tinted, wrong prescription. And it really just came by slowly working the steps. I really don't know any other solution other than once I experienced living in reality, I didn't want anything else. I realized it wasn't as boring as I thought it was going to be. Things that were obligatory to me are no longer obligatory. I can accept the fact that it's part of reality. And 9 times out of 10, and this is again how I started to accept and appreciate it, is it's true what God brings me, right? So if God brings me a man who's sexually abused me, I can accept and understand that he's sick, and that's reality. Instead of holding a grudge or blaming or being angry my entire life, I can just accept the reality of the fact that he's sick. And it's just a lot easier. But again, it's not something that I just came into the program and said, I accept everything. No, it's practice, practice, practice. And there's times, just like the situation I just explained, where I have to accept the fact that in reality, I'm not in control of my son. And that just, for me, that's just like, I'm not in reality when I think that. So, and most of my life, it's hard for a mom because most of my life I was that. So it's really hard. But I guess the thing that really helps me is, again, just higher power. If I'm in a situation that I'm upset, I've got a knot in my stomach or whatever it is, I'm probably not accepting something. I'm probably not surrendering something. There's something that I don't want to let go of. And, by surrendering, I can accept reality the way it is. And it's not as bad as I thought.
Love that. And I love how you keep coming back to practice, Practice, not
Yes.
perfection. That's awesome. And one other thing you mentioned that just has made a huge difference in my life is you said, I spent my whole life wearing a pair of glasses that was the wrong tint, the wrong prescription. And for me, I still, even though I have changed glasses and prescriptions hundreds of times in recovery, I still
Yeah.
need to be willing to say, hey, you know what? My prescription still may be off. And there's other ways
Yeah.
of seeing truth. So
True.
very cool.
Yes.
All right. Another question from our live audience. This comes from Braden. Braden asks, how do you recognize moments when you are making yourself your own God?
Well, there's a lot of different ways. God reminds me in several different ways. Usually it's, depending on the situation, it can be very subtle, from like just kind of it's like the lust. It's just like a high. It just rushes through my body. And I just kind of feel that, like that dizziness. And I don't know how to explain how it feels, but that's definitely one way that I recognize that I'm not in the solution, and that I'm fighting. If I'm white knuckling, that's another way that I can recognize that. I get everything from headaches, stomach aches. It's almost always a physical manifestation for me, and I really don't understand why, but it is. And it's either any of those physical things, a headache, a body rush, a knot in my stomach. These are things that I use to recognize. It also can be someone in the program saying something like my sponsor the other day said, wow, you're taking things personal. I was like, oh, yeah, okay, yeah. I don't need to do that anymore. God's got me. So I guess that's kind of, that's how I would, I guess, answer that question. I don't know if I answered the whole thing, but
that's really good. Thank you for sharing that and your experience with that. One thought that I have, I'm putting myself in a newcomer's shoes. You said you answered, the first part of that answer was, hey, if I'm making myself my own God, I feel a rush. I feel that thing that when in a newcomer's shoes, that rush is good. Well, it's at least that's what their experience has been. So how do you then say, hey, this is different than a good rush. This is a rush that could lead me to self. So tell me a little bit more about that.
So can you say the question again? I'm sorry.
Yeah. So what would be the difference between that rush you feel when you said, hey, when I'm making myself my own God, versus
good
a
or bad?
good feeling that is good,
Okay. Yeah, I understand the question. Thank you. That's good. Well, here's the thing is I don't know the difference. So when I feel that, I have to stop. Pausing, by the way, is another thing that really works for me, because my mind goes and goes and goes and goes and goes. And it's also another way that I stop trying to take control. But I have to pause. I have to ask God, what's your message? What's the message here? Is the message that I'm not in the right place, that I'm trying to be you, God? Or is the message that there's something here I need to fix or take care of, that I need to do in order to not be disconnected from God? So I have to stop. I have to sit and I have to listen for the message, and I have to ask questions for guidance. And then I can usually tell if it's a good rush or a bad rush. And honestly, the way my life is today is pretty simple and basic in God's world. I don't get a lot of those body rushes anymore. I get really good feelings when miracles happen, but it's not the same. It's not the same as lust running through my veins. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that goes back, once again, put myself in the newcomer shoes. That lust going through my veins, that rush going through my veins, that's what I live for. How can I give up that? And you mentioned this. You thought life would be boring in recovery, but it's not. Tell me that transition a little bit.
So how to give up the rush? Well, I think it says somewhere in the solution, we stepped off the edge into oblivion. And that's kind of how it was. I didn't want to give up my life either. I didn't want to stop being in control. I didn't want to stop misbehaving sexually. I didn't want to give up that rush. So I wish I had a specific, here's how I did it. Here's your magic answer. There really isn't a magic answer. It just started slowly. It started by me acting as if I believed. It started for me acting as if I wouldn't die if I didn't have that rush. Because in the first, I didn't believe it. It's just like it says, I stepped off the edge into oblivion. And I didn't believe that I could have anything else, that nothing was going to provide me with that feeling. And so steps 1 and 2 kind of helped me realize that wasn't healthy for me. And then in step 3, I was able to say, I'm giving this up to you, God, whether I die or not. I'm giving this up to you. I don't want this anymore. I don't want to feel like this anymore. And I'm giving it to you. And a miracle happens. He listens.
Yeah, and it didn't kill us. I love that. And that goes back to the practice principle, I think. Thank you so much for sharing that, Wendi. Awesome. Yeah. We have a question from Pete. Pete says, how does someone determine whether they are dealing with addiction or a character defect when it comes to sexual lust? Or does it matter if they're willing to do what they need to do to overcome the issue?
Let's see. So how do you tell if it's an addiction or a character defect? Well, I'm not a doctor, so I don't really know much about how addiction works other than what I've been taught. But I think that for me, if I'm living in my character defects on a constant basis, I'm addicted. I'm addicted to my character defects. I'm addicted to resentment, anger, pride, fear, ego. So whether I'm saying I'm addicted to lust or addicted to resentment, it doesn't matter for me. My character defects are part of my addiction. And the only way that I can have progressive victory over that is by knowing that that's my character defects and surrendering them. And by doing that, I'm coming out of the addiction, even if it's just for a moment. So I honestly don't know how you could determine the difference. I don't know that there is one. For me, it's basically the same. My character defects are part of my addiction. So.
I like that answer. That helps me recognize that, hey, no matter what I'm struggling with, the solution isn't here. The solution is with my higher power.
Whether the problem is here.
Right. The problem's right here, right at the core. Perfect. Yeah. All right. Another question from our live audience. This comes from Eric. Do you ever feel like you are inadequate at service in sponsoring or in your service? How do you reconcile those feelings of inadequacy when giving service?
I don't know why I'm laughing. I guess because for a long time, I didn't really think I had much to offer in the way of service. And for me, there is no such thing as inadequate service. And I mentioned that I didn't sponsor for a long time because I didn't want to be responsible for someone else's recovery. And I felt like, if they relapsed or if they slipped or if they went back out there, it was my fault that I didn't do something wrong, or I didn't do something right. So, it just kind of goes back to that answer is I don't know. I have to ask God. I have to ask for guidance. Like, I don't know if I'm inadequate until I do it. And I'm going to tell you that 99.9 times it's not inadequate. It doesn't matter if you're giving in some way, it can't be wrong. It can't be bad. I guess I don't really know how else to explain that. I'm sorry.
No, I love that. I think that's really powerful, Wendi. I mean, if I'm giving what I've been freely given, even if it's imperfectly, if I'm practicing that, it's going to help. It's going to help someone at some point. Good stuff.
Yeah.
All right. Another question that, or this is something that you shared from your share that I thought was really powerful. You talked about confidence, not arrogance.
Mhm.
What does that look like? What does the difference look like in your life? I mean, when do you recognize, oh, this is arrogance rather than confidence? And how do you turn back to confidence when that arrogance rears its ugly head?
Yeah, it's tough. That was hard for me too, being an egotistical person, and thinking that confidence meant that I knew everything, that nobody could tell me I was wrong. I was confident. But that is arrogance. So confidence for me, it kind of goes back to, um, in my weakness, I'm strong. So um, being confident today doesn't mean I know everything. It means that I have tools that I can use. I'm confident that I can use the tools of the program to defeat arrogance. So the difference between confidence and arrogance for me is humility. So if I am not in humility, I'm arrogant. I'm self-righteous. I have a whole list of selves that fit in right there. So um, the arrogance is just ego, and I guess the way that I would determine the difference is, like I said, with confidence, I have tools and I know that I can find the answers. I guess it would come back to, um, I don't know. Like with confidence, I can find the answers. With arrogance, I think I know the answers, even if they're wrong. So I hope that answers.
Love that. I come back to I don't know, and I think that goes to the practice, not perfection. Once again, it's okay that I don't know. I can laugh at myself in this process and not take
Yes.
myself too seriously, thinking that I've got to know the answer to everything. What a beautiful thing!
Right.
Beautiful concept. I
Yes.
love how this is coming together. This is good stuff. All
Good.
right. Sophia asks, what are some unexpected experiences you've received through giving up the rush, through not satisfying the imperious urges of addiction?
The unexpected, what was it? The unexpected results?
Unexpected experiences or
Oh,
results, yeah, you've received
okay.
through giving up the rush and not giving into the imperious urge.
Well, the unexpected experience was a spiritual one. And as I mentioned, it just kind of happened organically as I was working the steps and learning to be a person uh, of God. And, by having that spiritual experience, I'm not giving up. Yeah, I try to look at it like I'm not giving up something, I'm getting something. So I'm giving up lust, but I'm getting back serenity and peace and joy. So, you know, that's the unintended result of the steps, is to have a spiritual experience. And man, that really worked for me. It really happened. And I can pretty much guarantee that if you do an honest and thorough working of the steps, you'll have that unintended experience as well.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that, Wendy. One of the things that you brought up a couple of times, and it refers back to, at least in my mind, into the White Book, and you quoted it, stepping off the edge into oblivion. And I think one of the next sentences says something to the effect of we learned that not having sex didn't kill us. And you talked about I
Right.
didn't die. I didn't die. When I'm wrong, I didn't die. It didn't kill me. Talk a little bit more about that process of being able to accept that, whatever it is that I'm craving, that I'm seeking, whether it's approval of someone else or whether it's the my drug of choice. If I don't do it, I'm not going to die. How did we get to that point of accepting that and actually believing it?
I, I I only have one word: practice. I know I keep saying that, but
Love it.
that's it. I mean, I honestly thought I would die. I honestly thought my life would be boring. But I guess it comes back to being teachable, and just watching other people step off that edge and they're not dying. They're not only are they not dying, but they're learning to live by stepping off that edge. And so the more that I do it, the better it is. The more the experience is. So yeah, just practice. That's what I do.
Beautiful stuff, Wendi. Well, thank you so much. Before we close up, I'd like to ask you if you have any other words of wisdom before we start the closing down of this.
I would just say that, living in the solution brings me a lot of miracles. And I could go off on a whole list of miracles, but I won't. But I guess my last thought would be, if you're a newcomer, don't give up before the miracle happens. Keep coming back and don't give up before the miracle happens. That's what I had to do, because there were many times I felt like giving up. As somebody mentioned, I wanted that rush in my veins and I didn't want to give up. But once I saw the miracle, it was great. And I'm so thankful I didn't give up. So don't give up before the miracle happens.
Thank you. And I'm grateful you didn't give up before the miracle happened, because you have been a great influence in my life. Thank you, Wendi. Thank you, great, Justin. Yeah, absolutely. That was a great RECO12 weekly speaker meeting for all addicts and those wanting to learn more about addiction and the recovery therefrom. Please consider joining our WhatsApp group and participate in our community. Our Facebook group is also there, asking questions, answering others' questions that may come up. And if you've not yet rated and reviewed the podcast in Apple Podcasts, please go do so now. It's a great way to work your Step 12 and to help us work our Step 12 in sharing this message with others. RECO12 will be going to podcast only for the rest of 2022 calendar year. Sorry about that, guys. We're not going to do live meetings for the next 6 weeks. I've pre-recorded several episodes that will be powerful. Next week, we'll hear from Justin and Aaron B. Not me, Justin B., a different Justin B., as they shared in the SA Lifeline conference from a couple of months ago that I helped moderate in a RECO12 style live session. And the topic of that one will be healing families. It really happens. Make sure you're subscribed to the podcast and platform of your choosing for the next month and a half so that you can see all of the episodes that'll come out. I'll send at least one per week out for the next month and a half. And then we'll get right back into the live things January 6th with Robert P., whose topic will be alone versus lonely. And I think it's going to be a really good one. But between now and then, like I said, there will be at least one pre-recorded episode released weekly. The WhatsApp and Facebook communities will still be active, and we'll be daily living in the solution. And that'll be our goal. Now let's launch off into the rest of our day with the we version of the Step 3 prayer. Wendi, would you like to say that for us?
Absolutely. Thank you. Yes, I always use the we version because I can't do this alone. First, we'll take a moment to reflect on what we've heard and how we can carry that message to the still suffering sexaholic. God, we offer ourselves to Thee, to build with us and to do with us as Thou wilt. Relieve us of the bondage of self, that we may better do Thy will. Take away our difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those we would help of Thy power, Thy love, and Thy way of life. May I do Thy will always. Amen.
Amen. Keep coming back, everybody. Come trudge this road with me. It's a happy road. Work it. You are worth it.
Standing still a moment, carving out this time, reflecting on the landscape of this life of mine. Peaks too high to conquer, streams too wide to cross, troughs too deep to walk through without incurring loss. Yet here I am, still standing tall, despite the rough terrain. One like me survived the storms and walked through wind and rain. Still standing, I will fight the good fight, still searching for glimmers of light, feet still on the ground.
know I still can fly. I may not soar unfettered, I may not rise too high.
Record it in the book of life and bind it with a seal.